Instead of demanding respect from the person outside of me, I need to give myself respect. Instead of telling the person outside of me that they need to be loving with me, whilst I might silently be abusing myself on the inside, well, I can't get away with that level of hypocrisy in the universe, because the universe is a foolproof thing. Hey everyone, I'm Kerry K. Come dive with me. Let's go straight into today's topic. For those of you who are regular, this is how I always start. Let's just go in there, into the topic today of boundaries. And I'm not going to be talking about boundaries with the same religious fervor that many people do. And by that, I mean this kind of staunch, intense affiliation with boundaries. You know, I see this so often where people cannot. They feel like failures because they cannot implement a boundary. And they feel like, oh, I messed up because I couldn't, because I let somebody intrude on what should have been a boundary. Boundaries, in most cases, don't work. And it's a very foolish idea to think that they will. And I'm going to share with you exactly why. And I know that when I say to you that boundaries don't always work, they're not always the answer. A lot of the time they're really foolish. And there's a really dark side to boundaries. I know that when I said that, a lot of people had instant hair loss because they were like, what is she talking about? She's got to be burnt at the stake. You can't let somebody like that talk such drivel. There is absolute beauty in today's conversation. I'm going to share it with you, and I want you to open your heart and receive it. As always, you're going to know what is resonant with you, and if it's not resonant, chuck it out the window. Look, there's the proverbial open window, throw it right out. But if this works and it sits into a place inside of you that makes you go, oh, that makes sense, that feels good, then we're on a winning wicket. And that's my goal, to share with you a deeper truth and a higher truth. So there are times, let's just start here. There are absolutely always going to be times when you're going to say no to someone, and that's going to be necessary. And yes, you can call that a boundary. It's just not always going to work. But what is? Something beyond boundaries, standards. The standard by which you treat yourself becomes your boundary. What do I mean by that? Well, the way that boundaries are intended to work is as follows. You would, if you were following the narrative of boundaries, you would not let anybody treat you badly. In other words, you would insist. You would demand even, this is how you treat me. And you treat me good, and you treat me right, and you do it, otherwise you're out the door. When people talk about boundaries, you'll notice that there's a little superiority that comes up. It's not a bad thing. We're human. We all have egos. I'm not judging anyone who does this. But there's a little superiority that surfaces, and it goes like this. I told that person, I told them these are my boundaries and they didn't like it, but that's just tough luck because this is my boundary and they're not allowed to cross it. So there's a little bit of a one-upment. And people like this kind of sense. So it's the ego, really, isn't it? The only part of you that's ever going to want a one-upment is the ego. And the ego loves to be right, and it loves for somebody else to be wrong. You're not wrong, okay? If you're recognizing yourself in this behavior, this is not an excuse for you to judge yourself. This is just a perspective that's going to open your eyes and restore you to truth, return you to something higher. That's always my goal. Let's go beyond the ego. Let's go beyond boundaries. Let's go into a much higher truth, because for heaven's sakes, you're in an ascension lifetime. This is not about, oh, Kerry, let's take our time, baby steps. No, this is go time. So we've got to get concepts like this, and I know that those of you who are ready are leaping, and you're right here with me, and you're going, yes, Kerry, let's go. So let's do it. So there is this dark side to boundaries, wherein people will show the superiority. In other words, the ego is going to rise. And remember, the ploy of the ego is, if I put you down, then I can stand on you and be more. So there will be that dark side to boundaries. No, it's not always going to be the case, but it's worthy of being seen. More important, however, when we're looking at the dark side to boundaries, is the following. Now, you already know this. That is, everything's connected. Everything is interconnected. I'm interconnected with you. You are interconnected with me. We are interconnected in a pool of consciousness called the collective. Now, it's true to say that the collective is pretty much hosted right now in two different worlds. This is the world of the false matrix and the true matrix. That's the only real division that there is between humans right now. And division is not even the right word. It is simply affiliation. There's those beings affiliated with the true matrix, which is organic, God source creator consciousness. And then there are those people aligned with the false matrix, which is that which we were born to, that which is archonic in nature, that which is malevolent and manipulated and posed as a reality, but was really a pseudo reality. It was a mimicking reality. There's a playlist on my channel about the two matrices, so go and watch that if you want more information. But that's it. We are in these one of these two collectives. So how separate? How separate can you possibly be? And by the way, I'm also aware that there are people who don't like that concept. There are people who don't like when I talk about two different worlds, the false matrix, the true matrix. There are people who don't like this idea. They say, Kerry, it's really divisive. You shouldn't be so divisive. This is not divisive. My loves, this is simply where we are heading. We are walking into a road that is splitting, the two world split. It's a video that's up here on YouTube. We are splitting paths. One is raising consciousness, one is detouring and will eventually raise consciousness, but slower, right? That's just what is. That is what happens at the ascension window. It's not good and bad. It's not the good guys and the baddies. It is simply where your energy is most resonant. So, the collective of each of those two worlds are exactly that, a pool of collective consciousness that you reside in. Some of you hop and jump between the two matrices, and that's pretty difficult, but it's possible. I don't mean it's difficult to hop between the two. It's pretty easy because those are when you go ego bound and then you have higher truth come in. So that's the hopping. That's the easy part. The hard part is finding your balance. The hard part is having one foot in both worlds. That's when you really get quite confused about life and where you feel quite wobbly. There is the Stability series. It's a really beautiful trilogy series of meditations. It's on my website. That's to help you get that lovely sense of stabilizing you into the reality that you are most connected to, most affiliated with. And if you're listening to this video, that's obviously going to be the true matrix, the organic creation template. That's what we're returning to. Can you imagine being there in the organic creation template, right? We're in this place called true reality, wherein we are experiencing life as 5D and beyond. Can you imagine having boundaries? Can you imagine having separation? Can you imagine having protection? It wouldn't even be a thought to us. Why? And that doesn't mean that there would be beings who are of lower vibration who wouldn't perhaps want to interfere. It would more be a case of my frequency emanates from me and my frequency protects me. I want you to think of your frequency, your highest frequency, as a spark of light. And when you build that spark of light grows and it radiates and it becomes a shield. But it's not a shield that serves in the way that boundaries do. Boundaries serve as a wall of separation, and you are pushing something away and you are separating yourself and you are protecting yourself and you are in defense, sometimes even offense. When you are in this natural emanation, this natural radiance of your truth, guess what's going to happen? Instead of boundaries, you're going to have standards. Instead of needing to even explain to somebody what your boundaries are. That to me is the most ludicrous idea. Imagine sitting down and explaining to somebody your boundaries. It makes no sense in the world because you are a human being operating in a field of energy. You're not an intellectual thing first, you're an energetic thing first. And these interactions with another person, they happen at the energetic, not the intellectual level. Study happens at the intellectual level. Life happens at the energetic, which means it's not preconceived. It is not delineated into words. This is why, oh God, there's so many reasons why, but it's one of the reasons why boundaries do not work, because they're working with words, not energy. Your energy, when you have a standard of self-honoring and you have a person coming into your field who's dishonoring of themselves, because you can only dishonor another when you dishonor yourself. So they're dishonoring of themselves and they're going to want to project that at you. You will become like the reverse of a magnet. You will become a repellent, an energetic, automatic repellent. They'll suddenly remember they left their stove on and they've got something else to do, somewhere else to be, and they will find a way out of your reality because your reality will not support their energy. Are you starting to see this difference? Because it's not a difference of words. What I'm describing to you is not a case of, oh, okay, Kerry, so boundaries are when you're pushing someone away, but you're talking about a natural field of protection. Isn't it kind of the same thing? It is not remotely the same thing, although it has a similar impact. Just the one is really effective because it cannot be fooled. The one that is based on frequency, in other words, your frequency emanating from you, becoming a light protecting you, that is a foolproof thing. The other, which is where you are asserting boundaries, do you know what's going to happen? You're going to start building a wall and you're going to trap yourself on the inside of that wall, because anytime you create separation between you and another thing, it is unnatural. And that separation blocks out them and blocks you in. This is why when a person is hurt, harmed, traumatized, they inadvertently wound themselves even more by putting up a defensive wall around their heart. They don't do this because they're bad. They do this because they're in pain. And eventually they'll realize that they've blocked out the hurt and everything else with it. See, you can't just block out hurt but somehow think that you're going to filter in love. It doesn't work this way. This intellectually you might think it does. Energetically, no. You cannot block out one energy but then somehow think that your filter is going to allow in all other approved energies. That's the concept of people who are promoting boundaries. Now, there are people, even friends of mine, who use the word boundaries, but they are working at it from a very conscious perspective. So I'm by no means saying that anytime someone talks about a boundary, it's all about this kind of low frequency, confused space. There are people who do use the word boundary, but imply a higher understanding. So please take the concept that I'm giving you here and cast everything else aside, most especially judgment. When your standards have brought you into co-resonance, have brought you into harmony with the universe, you're shielded, but not with a wall. You're shielded in the sense that only like frequency can come and interact with you. You are securing your place in the true matrix when you harness and build and grow that beautiful divine frequency of yours. And I always talk about devotion to self, investment in self. Practice this connection to you. These are not words. This is a way of living. This is not you going, oh, okay, Kerry says I got to connect with myself. Okay, well, how do I do that? This is about you slowing yourself down into connection. You see, here on YouTube, I give you the words. That's what I do here. I give you the information. In my online community, this is where we do the practical work and you apply what I'm teaching you here. This is where you will learn to connect to your truth and to stabilize yourself in a higher reality. You can do that on your own. You don't have to do it with me. That's an option that's available. I'm sharing this with you because I don't want you to feel like you've got to take the words I'm sharing with you now and make them applicable on your own. You can. It's totally doable. But the support is also available to you if you feel that you would like it. I'm reaching out my hand. You're welcome to take it. Boundaries are a beautiful concept that doesn't work because nothing in this universe can ever be separate. And then you might say, well, what about darkness? What about evil? Again, come back to the frequency. Your frequency is the thing that's going to protect you. And it's really powerfully important that you cultivate that frequency and that you start to trust that frequency. So in other words, it's like leaning into the universe and saying, well, I've got the universe flowing through my being, flowing through my veins. So I'm going to lean into that universal life force, that bandwidth, the frequency that is the harmonious universe I belong to. And I'm going to let that buoy me and carry me. So I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust that frequency. Then I'm going to stop being in defense, which is another way of saying, oh, spiritual warrior, that you get to put down your sword, you get to lay down your weaponry, because so many of you for so long, and I should even say so many of us for so long, and include myself here, have been at war, whether it's in a past life or whether it is fighting a spiritual battle in this life. Right now, you get to lay down the weaponry, lay down the proverbial sword, so that you can find peace and courage. And it's the courage to face yourself. You drop the sword, you face yourself. That's part of that cultivation of light. That's part of the warrior energy that you're stepping into, that is so brand new. So as you step into this heightened boundaries, which is really raising of your own standards, connection to your own higher truth, higher frequency, and living from that divine field of protection in trust, in union, in connection, when you start operating at this bandwidth, you will be in a relationship with the universe. You, spiritual warrior, will learn to not only trust, but to connect and to love being held by the universe. Not that the universe is doing the work for you, but the two of you come into harmony with each other. The moment you're trying to initiate an artificial boundary, it's exactly that. It's artificial. And remember what I said earlier, you're going to lock yourself in, or even out. You're going to lock yourself out of life, out of flow. There are so many people who consistently say to me things like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired, sleep can't fix it. I'm so exhausted. I just want off this planet. I can't anymore. That's emotional exhaustion. And that emotional exhaustion normally comes from having a wall up around yourself that you're holding up, holding in place, and it's a full-time job. And that comes from hurt. That comes from being harmed and being traumatized and not knowing that it's safe to be inside of you and to connect with the light that you now have access to, because you didn't before, and to learn to really become a responsible caretaker of that light field, that light frequency. That is a divine, truly divine interaction with yourself. And I wish it upon you. I wish for that divine experience of flow and trust with the world, because it gives you a sense of freedom and relationship and connection and trust and all of these beautiful things. So you don't need boundaries. You need something way beyond boundaries, which is your essence. Having said that, always, always protect yourself and be wise. So I would never, ever promote or want you to invite somebody into your life because, you know, Kerry said my frequency is going to protect me. So, hey, ex-murderer, come on in, you know, I'm sure this is going to work out just fine. Obviously have common sense, right? I said it in the beginning. There are going to be times where you're going to push somebody out and say, look, you're not welcome here, right? The need for self-preservation is always going to be important, but you will eventually go beyond that. And when all you've got is a boundary, okay, use the boundary. Your life's in danger, dear God, use the boundary. Whilst you are working at this, so whilst you are working at initiating this connection to your inner light, to your truth, to your highest self, and meeting that highest self, whilst you're working towards doing that, you may very well need to implement a boundary. Go ahead and do that. That's not a failure. That's self-preservation, and it's totally important. Just don't think that that's your only option, and don't think that you have failed if you try to initiate a boundary and it doesn't work. If you've initiated a boundary and the boundary's collapsed, it hasn't worked, somebody has infringed, intruded upon that boundary, they have dishonored you, for example, I want you to know that that is a sign that you haven't honored yourself fully, that there's still a pain inside of you, wherein perhaps someone in your past dishonored you and you haven't fully released it or healed it. There is something inside of you that is still holding the memory and the emotional signal of dishonor. And then a boundary is always going to fail. And then you're going to think that you failed. It's not you that failed. It's the failure of boundaries. That's that dark side of boundaries, that you're trying to do something from a very linear, logical level before you're energetically ready to do it. So cultivate that self-honor, the standards by which you treat yourself, knowing that if those boundaries that you might have in place now are going to fail or have failed in the past, that is not you getting it wrong. That is simply you being able to see the places that you still have to grow. still have to work on. And that's beautiful when you see those moments, thank the universe and say, right, I now know that instead of demanding respect from the person outside of me, I need to give myself respect. Instead of telling the person outside of me that they need to be loving with me, whilst I might silently be abusing myself on the inside, well, I can't get away with that level of hypocrisy in the universe, because the universe is a foolproof thing, because energy doesn't lie. It never can. The light that you are is growing even now through this conversation. Honor the light that you are and watch this video next, because it's going to take you even deeper into that light. All my love. Bye-bye for now.